this is hard to explain, and I'm going to explain it anyway because you can hand it. Remember the winners and the losers. In the World War I, England and France were winners. Who lose? Germany, obviously a loser, right? Austria, obviously a loser. Russia, even though Russia starts here, they surrender before the war is over, so they're a loser. What about Italy? Italy starts here, and then waits, and then comes over here, and they end up kind of being a loser as well, economically. They're not really a main player. When the war is over, the United States, even though we are clearly a winner, it's because of us that that war is over. We are not on either side because, remember, we don't believe in the winners and losers, so we don't sign off on the Treaty of Versailles. And we don't enter the League of Nations. And part of it is that we think the treaty is too harsh. Well, why is it so harsh? This is human psychology. You guys can get this. Remember, France loses 1.2 million. England, I believe, was 900,000. Germany loses 2 million. Why? Why can't we say there's no winners, there's no losers, let's just start from scratch? Yeah, it's human nature. We fought the war, amazing amounts of blood, our brothers, our sons, our fathers. We go back home and we tell them, well, we're just as much at fault as Germany. Is that going to sell? Especially knowing that these guys are democracies, which means people vote them in. It's easy, in a sense, for the United States to say, yes, you guys are all losers, but we weren't in that. Now, we lost a lot of people, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, we didn't start it. We are there 17 months. These guys are there from 1914 to 1918. And the death tolls are amazing. And so they can't. They have to have some reason for having been in the war. And the Treaty of Versailles is the justification. Now, for England and France, they get a gob of money from Germany, and so that kind of makes them feel better. What happens in 1930s? England and France, it's been 12 years. What has happened to that emotional high that they had right after the war? It fades. Are they as angry with the Germans? No. In fact, in hindsight, they look back and they say, you know, the United States may have been right. And we see this with the signing on with the Kellogg-Briand Pact. You know what? We may have been too imperial. We may have been a little bit too eager to fight. Remember, we didn't have to get in 1914. If we'd have just been talking a little bit more, maybe we could have avoided this. What we see with England and France is that the winners tend to go a little bit, and I don't want to say softer, but I will definitely say rule of law. Law instead of military power. That's the solution. That's the way you resolve conflicts. What about the loser side? They have the same emotions that the English and French have. They also lost. Germany lost more people. And when the war is over, what do they have to console themselves? They can't say that they weren't at fault. They have to say that they were at fault. They had a revolution that overthrew the Kaiser and tried to create some democratic government. Very weak, constantly in problems, and their economy was horrible. You see pictures, and I'm pretty sure some of your textbooks have pictures of these little kids with a wheelbarrow with stacks of money that are literally that high for a loaf of bread. It means that they're just printing off the money. It has no value whatsoever. Their economy is genuinely in the tank, and they're printing out the money because they have to pay England and France. So these guys, when they look back at the war, what is their assessment? In England, England looks back at the war, and they say, we were a little bit trigger happy. We should have talked. But England is speaking from a certain point of luxury. Their economy is booming. They're doing very well, much more stable. After 10 years, the emotions have subsided. and they can reassess their decision making and say, we should have been more prone to legal disputes, diplomatic actions, and less prone to military. When the Germans look back at the same time period, the Germans, the Italians, the Austrians, their economy is in shambles. And they look back at this. And they say, what was wrong with the war? Should we have been more involved with the diplomacy and the law? Or should we have been more involved with power? And this is what we talked about when we mentioned what was Germans' reaction when they sunk the Lusitania. It wasn't even an American ship, it was an English ship. I mean, you could think by all rights, it's English, they're the enemies, we should shoot them. The United States said, no, the Lusitania is a cruise liner. It's not military. There's people, normal civilians on it, and you killed 1,200 civilians. If you thought that it was carrying contraband, you should have popped up, you should have inspected it. If you found missiles or any contraband, you should have let everybody off because they're not soldiers, they're civilians. Let them off, put them on lifeboats, then scuttle the ship. But you didn't. You saw the ship, blew it out of the water. Not only did you kill 1,200 civilians, but you also killed a couple hundred Americans. The United States was livid because you're not respecting the rights of neutrals. That's what got us into the war, was the rights of neutrals. And we told Germany, if you do that, we're going to look at this as an act of war. And what was Germany's reaction? Okay, we won't do it. This is so hard for us to understand because today when we think of Germany, we think Hitler. But that's a different war. If you ever have an opportunity, there's a 1927 movie, could be 25, I can't remember, called Wings. It's a fantastic movie. Wings. It's a silent movie. The people who are in this movie, one of them was actually an ace fighter in World War I. The other actor had to learn how to fly in order to be in this movie. He never did it before. And this is amazing scenes. They're actually showing the fighters. And it's a silent movie, but it's really, really good. And they always refer to, this is 25, this is way before Hitler. They were talking about the fighters as being knights of the air. Knights, as in, a knight of the air. They had great respect for the German fighters, and the Germans had respect for the Americans and for the British. It was like you're a different group of people. When we think of Hitler and the Nazi regime, that does not come to mind. We think death camps, we think atrocities, we think there is no such thing as law there. And to some extent, it's an accurate assessment of Nazis. And why? Because when these guys look back at the war, they think that the reason why they lost is that they pandered to these laws. We mentioned this last class. For Germany, I know in your brain you think Germany is just a big, Hitler was just a bigot. He was a homophobe. He was prejudiced. It's not the Nazi ideology. It's not about bigotry. In our brain, we think somebody who's racist is some guy who's uneducated living off the hills. For the Germans, that's not it. They all thought that they were superior, intellectually superior. That they were free of these rules. Like morality. Morality is something that the church created in order to protect the weak. But they shouldn't have. If you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in anything outside of man, then morality doesn't mean anything. You have to look at the world as if they're all animals. They're all a herd. And some of these animals in the herd are strong and they should be reinforced. And some of them are weak and they should be culled. And you treat the world as if they're animals. If you don't have God or religion or morality in mind, if you remove that, if you're only thinking about humans as animals, then what's to prevent you from saying, okay, these groups, they're the master race. They're the ones that should be promoted. And these guys, they need to be culled, systematically removed. This is the argument Hitler is making. He's doing it from the sense of science. And he looks back and he says, you know, all these laws are really used by the weak to handcuff the strong. If we were fighting World War I, and if we had done unrestricted submarine warfare from day one, then we would have won this war. Who cares if they're civilian? They're English civilians. Who cares if they're Americans? Just give them an onslaught. We would have won the war. You have to understand that this changes the ideologies. When we were thinking of World War I was really about empires. It was a struggle for empires. But when we think of World War II, it's about ideology. Those who had won, the victors in World War I, tended to be stronger on this rule of law. And oddly enough, those that were the losers of World War I were far stronger on rule by might. The strong will win. That's why I mentioned when you look at this picture of Mussolini, it's not an accident that he looks like a thug. It's totally deliberate. Power, order. This is how we'll win. We have strength, power. It's not an accident that Hitler, okay, he was a corporal in the military. He's not a military man. He's actually a civilian, but he wears a military outfit. His entire group of folks are all in this military group because it's order, it's power, it's strength. Hitler is elected into office in 1933. He doesn't have a revolution. He is elected. And he's elected on the promise that we are going to bring respect back to Germany. And we should, because we are the core of our civilization. He calls himself the Third Reich. The Second Reich goes back when Germany was formed in 1870. The First Reich goes all the way back to Charlemagne. And here's the humor of all humors with Charlemagne. We mentioned this in the earlier class. Charlemagne taken over both France and Germany. He had all of Europe. Well, it's humor and humor because Charlemagne was actually French. But in the Hitler's view, no, this is the German people. We took over Europe. We have a natural ascendancy. And if we go back into our history, in 1850, after the English defeated Napoleon, Napoleon went all over Europe. And we created this sense of a balance of power. This balance of power between different countries. It didn't include Germany. It should have. Because we were the most powerful group of people. We just weren't united. And as a result, we had England, we had France, we had Russia, and Germany wasn't accounted for. When we emerge and unite in 1870, then all of Europe shakes a little bit. And that's why we go into World War I, to try to readdress these empires. And we failed. But don't worry, we will rise again. But it's not based off of law. It's based on an argument that we will be strong. This master race concept is that scientifically, of the big herd of humanity, we're the strong ones. So we're not going to allow our strength to be sapped by these other folks. Does this make sense? Why is this a trouble? I mean, there's all sorts of trouble, but just ponder. One side is more committed to law. And one side is more committed to power. I don't know if any of you guys are philosophy majors. Have any of you ever read Plato's Republic? It's a great book. 350 BC, 380 BC, a long time ago. And he starts off this book with, and I don't know if you've ever read Plato. Plato sounds like it's a really hard thing to read. It's really, really easy. It's like reading a novel because he writes using characters. So a bunch of people, Plato's Republic, it's called the Republic, Plato, P-L-A-T-O, Plato's Republic. He starts with a group of people and they're going out to a party and they're just talking about things. And a guy named Thrasymachus, He's this guy who's all about power and might makes right. And the protagonist is a guy named Socrates, who was a real philosopher. But it's Plato writing for Socrates. And they end up with this question: which is more successful? The strong man who does whatever he wants, or the just man who follows the rules? And the rules of justice. It may be weak. Which is better? Which is more successful? What do you think his answer is? No, he's a philosopher. So he's going to say justice wins all the time. It may seem like the powerful guy wins, but the powerful guy is winning at the cost, basically, of his soul, of his character, of long-term integrity, and he can't maintain it all the time, and so everybody goes up against him. And yet the just man, because he's right, even though he may be physically weaker, and maybe he may even suffer setbacks periodically, because he's right, he will persevere. That's the basic argument. Now, he takes a good 1,000 pages to do it, and there's all sorts of wonderful allegories and other things, but that's the argument. But this is what we're seeing with World War II. And in practical, outside of philosophy, what do you think? Which is going to be more successful, law or might? You think so? Why?
Because if the other side isn't complying with following the law, then it doesn't even make sense to have laws.
You're very sharp, Teja. I don't agree with that. But let's talk about it on the short term. Now, first of all, we have to look at what's happening in the United States. These are what's happening in Europe. But the United States, we are not isolationists. By policy, we are not isolationists. And yet, and Mary brought this up right at the beginning, it's a social movement. As policy, we are engaging the world. But most of the people don't want to. In 1941, December 1st, 1941, they had a poll. Should we get involved? 41, remember, this World War II begins in 1939. So it's 2 years going. In December 41, December 1st, a poll. Should the United States get involved with this war? 90% said no. That's what this is armed against. He's looking and said, we should be involved, we should be helping. If it's against right and wrong, we should be on the side of the right. We should be helping the wolf, and we shouldn't be allowing the wolf to exist by himself. We should be in this war. But that was a minority. 90% said, no, we shouldn't get involved. But there was a kind of a qualification, a condition. The same poll also asked, what if we get attacked? And what's the answer?
Yes, we should.
Almost equally. Oh, if we are attacked, we should get involved. This is December 1. Why do I keep emphasizing December 1, 1941? And then December 8th, we get the exact same poll. And what's the result? 90%. Absolutely, we need to get into this war. Because what happened on December 7th? Pearl Harbor, we were attacked. What it means is that if we can get away and be isolationists, if we could be isolationists, we'd love to be isolationists. They had concepts called Fortress America. We are surrounded by oceans on both sides. We are not going to get hurt. It's not true. Soon as we get hit with Pearl Harbor, and not just hit, I know it's off in Hawaii, seems like far, far away, but it wiped out half of our fleet. I mean, it was a blow. We are not Fortress America. Immediately we change our views. Yes, we'll get into this war. Prior to this, though, remember, the people don't want to get involved. But in terms of a policy, are we neutral? No. From the very beginning, 1935, this is about the time when Italy starts attacking North Africa. And the United States says, well, we won't sell them weapons. In 36, we say, well, we won't sell them weapons, We'll still sell other things, clothes, food, whatnot, but not weapons. By 37, when it looks much closer, like we might get involved with this war, we still have this argument, we're not going to sell them weapons, but you know what? If they come to the United States, if they pay us cash, so there's no credit, and they pick up the weapons, we'll sell it. Why do we do that? Because this isn't equal. We are clearly on this side, and we don't want to help that side. When Mussolini is in this war, and we see Germany beginning to arm, it's not, we don't want to help them at all. We don't want to be involved with the war, but we're not supporting the rule by might. Cash and carry, and the reason why we do this is that we don't want to get sucked into the war. If we give them credit, then we want them to win, because what happens if we give somebody credit and they lose? We'll never get the money back, right? So we don't want credit, and we don't want to be shipping the weapons there, because if we ship the weapons there, then what could the other side do legitimately? Because that's right, we have contraband on. So you come in, you pick it up, you give it cash, we'll give it to you. Because we want you to win. We're still kind of hedging our bets, but this is also still 2 years before the war really breaks off. As soon as the war erupts, what do we do? I don't know if you have this, we'll talk about this in a second. We don't have to, I'll just tell you. Lend-lease. What does that mean? Cash and carry meant that you had to come here, pick up the weapons, and take it away and give us cash. What is lend-lease? And this is as soon as the war gets in. We will lend you whatever you want. We will lease you whatever you want. We will provide whatever materials you want. Do we do this to both sides? No. We do it to this side. We're not getting involved with this war. Why? Because most of the country doesn't want to get involved. They think we can stay out of it. But we are going to help this side. It's not equal. This isn't about empires. We're not blaming England for having an empire here. It's about ideology, and they're on the right side. Who are the people? What are the belligerents? We have England, right? We have France. We have Belgium. What's on this side? We have Germany, we have Austria, we have Russia, we have Italy, Japan. Remember, where was Japan at the end of World War I? I didn't put them up there, but this is why it's called a world war. We talked about this last class. They were on the Allied side. Why did they get involved with that war? Did they really care about Franz Ferdinand or England or anything like that? No. Go ahead. They wanted an empire. They were modeling after England. They loved to be on England's side because they want to be England. But England was pushing onto the rule of law. And by the 30s, England had denounced Japan for attacking China in 1931, 8 years before the war starts. And so Japan is on the rule of might side. They formed an agreement with the people that think like them. Germany, Austria, Russia. These are the groups. And even in our isolationist America, we don't have much of a disagreement on that. We just believe that we could avoid it if we can. Let me make sure you understand what happens.